Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end. In this episode, we feature the game's top 9 left-handed starters. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings. Prime 9. There aren't many ground rules for this group. You simply had to be one of the best starting southpaws since 1901.
Baseball immortality!
Career wins were a factor, but they were not our only criteria.
The strikeout king among all left-handed pitchers.
We looked for left-handed starters who were outstanding over a long period of time.
Got him!
And we considered those who were simply out of this world during their peak years. There are some legendary Hall of Famers in this show, and some who will most likely be there someday.
Glavine has been masterful tonight.
So here we go with the top 9 left-handed starters, beginning with number 9 on Prime 9. Philadelphia's Eddie Plank plied his craft in the early 20th century.
Plank was a dominating left-handed pitcher. Certainly a very large part of the success of the Athletics under Connie Mack for a number of years.
Plank won close to 300 games for the powerful A's from 1901 through 1914, even though his stuff wasn't all that overpowering.
He did not have lightning speed. He did not have a fast-breaking curveball. He didn't strike out that many men. He was the original crafty left-hander.
He had a very relaxed delivery, so that even though he was worked very hard early in his career, he was able to go on to have a very long career. That durability was his trademark.
Gettysburg Eddie won 20 or more games 8 times in his career, thanks in part to mound mannerisms that drove batters nuts.
On the mound, he had this very strange, enigmatic personality, which he didn't have off the field.
Puzzling delivery, and a propensity for fidgeting on the mound and taking his time that was so annoying to batters that it may have contributed to Plank's effectiveness.
Plank retired with the most wins and shutouts of any left-handed pitcher, and the shutout mark still stands today.
As a left-handed pitcher, absolutely one of the best ever.
I remember the first time I saw him, he was pitching batting practice, and this left-hander was throwing the ball all over the place, and Carl Ferrillo happened to be over near me. I said, "Carl, who's that?" And he said, "Some kid, he will never be a pitcher." Years later, I asked Carl why they didn't hire him as a scout.
Sandy Koufax pitched just 12 seasons in the majors, but the final 5 were as dominant a stretch as any pitcher has ever had.
Sandy Koufax, 1962. Sandy Koufax, 1963. Sandy Koufax, 1964. Sandy Koufax, 1965. Every year he was top.
If you consider the pitching Triple Crown to be leading the league in ERA, wins, and strikeouts, he not only led his own league, he won the Major League Triple Crown 3 times within a 4-year span. No other pitcher has won it 3 times total since 1900.
Koufax won 3 Cy Young Awards and threw 4 no-hitters, one of them sheer perfection.
Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Koufax is the only pitcher to win 5 straight ERA titles, even though hitters all but knew what was coming.
He only had 2 pitches. Great fastball, great curveball. But I used to say he could actually beat you with just one. When he wasn't getting the curveball over, he could just beat you with the fastball. So that's how good he was.
I knew him. He would tell you. He said, "Here it come." And the ball would get there and go up. It didn't do anything but just go up. And I couldn't hit it. It start here, go up.
His fastball snuck up on you and just exploded right in front of you.
Sandy Koufax.
Then you put the curveball in your mind and you have a real difficult time catching up with that fastball, and not too many people did, obviously.
Were it not for the injury that ended his career at just 165 wins, Sandy might be much higher on this list. Just ask those who saw him pitch.
I used to watch that man every time he was on the mound because he was the best left-handed pitcher I ever saw.
I think you could have 50, 60 major league players and you ask the same question, who is the toughest pitcher that you face? And they will all say Sandy Koufax.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the game's 9 best left-handed starters. We've made our case for 9 and 8, which means it's time for number 7. Tom Glavine won 2 Cy Young Awards in his career and finished in the top 3 4 other times.
Glavine's the left-hander who was just such a competitor and an athlete.
Right back to Glavine, inning over.
Tom Glavine would never give in, and he was stubborn.
Swing and a miss. Glavine gets him on something low and away.
He felt he was still going to make his pitches. It didn't matter what the situation was.
There's strike 3 call, and Glavine strikes out the side.
Very good at making the pitch when he needed to get the big out, whether the score was 1-0 or 6-5.
Glavine has been masterful tonight.
The 10-time All-Star had 5 20-win seasons, despite the fact that he didn't have electric stuff.
He was the type of pitcher that location was the most important thing, not velocity.
Well, he's out of there on 3 pitches against Glavine.
It was just amazing how he could just consistently put it where he wanted to put it.
Got it.
An individual that had pinpoint accuracy. When the catcher put the glove up, Tommy Glavine was going to hit that glove.
Got him inside corner, inning over.
He also knew he could change speeds at any time in the count, and that's a huge weapon to have.
He changed the speed on it, and he had it in a different location.
You could never really lock in on one pitch with Lav because he would drop the changeup whenever he wanted to drop, and that's why he was so successful. He had just as good a control with the changeup that he did with his fastball.
Oh, that's a good pitch.
Oftentimes, hitters can see the difference between a fastball and a changeup because there's so much difference in velocity. It wasn't the case with Tom Glavine. It looked like a fastball coming in there.
Strikeout number 10 for Tom Glavine.
Only 3 left-handers in history have more than Tom's 305 wins.
300 wins for Tom Glavine.
It's a rare milestone for any pitcher and has been a surefire ticket to Cooperstown.
He's a first ballot Hall of Fame guy, Mr. Consistency.
The ultimate professional. He went about his business. He did things the right way. He worked his tail off and good things came to him.
When you pitch for a team that had some of the best, it's easy to get overlooked. Case in point, Whitey Ford.
Whitey Ford, even though he's a Hall of Famer, people don't really talk about him as being an ace of a staff, but he was.
Whitey Ford was a pitcher, wasn't a power pitcher. He was just maybe the smartest pitcher that ever lived with about 17 different pitches. He really had an array of pitches that were remarkable.
I learned how to throw from 3 different angles. I could throw sidearm to left-handers or 3/4, and I could throw straight overhand, curveball that went straight down.
Whitey could throw a curveball 3-0 over the plate. He could throw his curveball anytime he wanted to.
The spin that he had on the ball, I could hear the rotation. I'm just going, spinning rapidly.
His biggest asset on the mound was to move the ball around, inside, low, and still be around the plate. Nobody ever really got a good shot at him.
You'd hit the ball, run down to first, make the right turn, go back to the dugout, but we're anxious to get up again. And then he'd proceed to do the same thing over and over.
He'd just get you out, and that was his bag. He's going to get you out.
Timmer strikes out.
They don't call him the chairman of the board for nothing.
And this chairman was never better than in the World Series, for his 10 Fall Classic wins are still the most ever.
He was the chairman of the board because he could remain calm. He never got too emotional about anything on the mound.
With men on base, he had that ability to make a much better pitch than he made without anybody on base, and it was that kind of guile that made Whitey Ford the great pitcher that he was.
Just consider for a moment Whitey's lifetime winning percentage and ERA, especially when you compare it to the best ever.
His .690 winning percentage is the greatest for any left-handed starter since 1901. And that 2.75 ERA in the live ball era since 1920 is the best. It's better than Seaver, better than Gibson, better than Sandy Koufax, better than any starting pitcher who pitched in the live ball era. And it really gives a sense of how wonderful Ford was as a pitcher.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the game's best left-handed starters. We opened with Eddie Plank and Sanford's Sandy Koufax. Next came Tom Glavine and Whitey Slick Ford, the chairman of the board, which means it's time for number 5. For many of his 24 seasons, Steve Carlton was one of the best, but the man they called Lefty was always looking to get even better.
He wanted to find out how max he could go. I mean, he always stepped it up. There was always another challenge for him. He wanted to be the best.
He wasn't going to let you down. He was going to give you everything he had.
When Steve pitched, he used to walk around the clubhouse and scream, "Today's win day, today's win day." I look back on that right now, it sounds a little selfish. What's that make the other 4 days, you know?
But Lefty knew what he was talking about, especially in '72. He won 27 of the Phillies' 59 triumphs that year and the pitching Triple Crown.
Anytime you can win that many games with a team that's not winning, you got to be doing something special.
He had such great work ethics. He knew how to use his pitches. His stuff was just dominant.
Good breaking pitch.
The greatest thing he had was a hard slider. No one could hit that, and he just kept throwing it, and I knew it was coming, but you still couldn't hit it.
He got it.
He said there were times with that slider when he could actually pinpoint it a half an inch where he wanted to pitch it.
The breaking pitch gets him.
It looked like a strike on the inner third of the plate, and it dropped down to the back foot of the right-handed hitter.
He's out on strikes.
His fastball complemented his slider perfectly.
A good, lively fastball.
And when you have a 1-2 combination like that, you can see why he's going to win a lot of ball games.
It's over. The Phillies win it.
Steve Carlton finished his Hall of Fame career with 329 wins and 4 Cy Young Awards. Those who saw him will never forget him.
I never saw anyone that I enjoyed watching pitch more than Steve.
With his talent and discipline, he became one of the great pitchers in the game.
He had confidence in himself. He knew how to pitch, knew how to get hitters out, and was probably one of the best competitors I've ever been around.
Carl Hubble has exceptional control. First, low inside, high outside. Third, low outside. And now in slow motion, high inside. Watch it. There is perfect control.
And Carl maintained his amazing control with a pitch that screwed up most everyone who faced him.
Carl Hubble was probably the greatest pitcher of his time. He had the trickiest pitch that any batter had ever seen, which was the screwball.
A pitch which was a reverse curve. The pitch would dive down into the feet of left-handed hitters and away from right-handed hitters.
It was that screwball which he threw with such brilliant precision that made him the top left-hander of his day.
To me, Carl's the greatest pitcher that I've ever seen. If there was any particular ball game to win and you needed it, I think Carl was the man to have on your side to win that important ball game.
Carl Hubble, the master of the screwball, was so important to the Giants between 1928 and 1943 that they nicknamed him the meal ticket.
Well, the Giants punched that meal ticket to the tune of 3 pennants and a World Series title. And along the way, Hubble captured 2 MVP awards, the only NL pitcher ever to receive that honor. Tales of Hubble's greatness are legendary.
He pitched 18 innings one time, beat the Cardinals 1-0. And he rested about 4 days and he came back and started pitching again. To me, that's a great pitcher.
What a master. Nothing disturbed him out there.
Not even the prospect of facing 5 straight future Hall of Famers in the 34 All-Star game, and unbelievably, striking out all 5 of them.
Not only had he struck out 5 All-Stars consecutively and under pressure, it was the resounding names: Ruth, Gehrig, Fox, Simmons, Cronin. These were not ordinary hitters.
It is still the greatest performance in the history of All-Star games.
Warren Spahn was a marvel to behold.
He was an artist. It was very easy catching Warren Spahn because he had such great control.
He can get you out with screwball, with slider inside, changeup.
He was so smooth, it didn't look like he was putting any effort in at all, and the ball would sneak by you.
Our slow-motion camera provides a picture of pitching perfection as Spahn kicks his leg high in the sky and with a sweeping motion whips a pitch.
What a pitcher he was, and boy, his record proves it.
Spahn pitched more innings than any other lefty and won more games than any pitcher since 1920. His 13 20-win seasons are simply astounding.
He plays alertly, and he plays with determination. Spahn's overwhelming desire to succeed is his greatest asset.
Warren was a thinking man's pitcher who studied each batter, and his library was extensive.
The thing that impressed me about him is he had a book on every hitter long before anybody had a book on anybody.
He told me about a philosophy that hitting is timing, and the pitcher's job is to upset that timing.
Spahn has retired the side on strikes to conclude a near-perfect performance.
He could change speed better than anybody, and that goes back to when he said that he wanted to outsmart the hitter, because that's what he did with these pitches, and he kept them on their toes at all times.
Spahn led the league in wins 8 times, earned 3 ERA titles, and captured a Cy Young Award. And to think he didn't pitch his first full season until he was 26.
He was a winner, a great competitor, good human being, and good athlete. One of the best.
I'm proud of my accomplishments. I think they were hard-earned. I enjoyed every minute, and I wouldn't change a thing.
We now return to Prime 9, where in this episode we're featuring the game's best left-handed starters. Some of these guys had short streaks of sheer domination, while others added a high level of greatness for a long period of time. There are only 2 lefties left, and they are indeed the very best. We begin with number 2. Randy Johnson was perhaps the most intimidating pitcher the game has ever seen.
Randy Johnson would really put fear in the hearts of the hitter.
Between the nearly 100-mile-an-hour heat and the wicked slider, and then you throw in the size and that motion, he leaves hitters trembling.
Pretty much for my career, I've ducked Randy Johnson. In our little circle, we call it Randy Johnson-itis. He's one of the most intimidating, unhittable pitchers.
Randy Johnson fans aside.
That sneer and snarl that he had on his face, the way he looked around that glove to get a sign.
He looked like he was about 7'8" on the mound. He's got those long arms. You know, he's got the hair coming out the back of the hat.
A guy with such long arms, long legs, and things going all over the place.
98 miles per hour.
He would keep hitters thinking that they could possibly die in the batter's box.
Watch the reaction of John Kruk. Would you say his heart is palpitating a bit?
The big unit led the league in strikeouts 9 times, captured 4 ERA titles, and won 5 Cy Young Awards.
What made him and what won him all those Cy Young Awards was his slider.
When you give up on it, it seems like it catches part of the plate, and when you start to swing, it dips down out of the strike zone.
Randy Johnson's slider came out looking like his fastball and just absolutely disappeared towards your back leg. No way you could touch it.
Got him!
I've seen hitters swing at it and have it hit him in the back knee and have no clue as to why it got there.
That's that big slider crumpled up like a rag doll.
No left-hander finished his career with more strikeouts than Johnson. And while winning 303 games, he had myriad memorable moments and milestones.
He has done it! Randy Johnson with the first Mariner no-hitter in history.
20. Randy Johnson has tied the Major League record for strikeouts in a 9-inning game. And Randy Johnson, at age 40 years, has painted an absolute masterpiece.
Johnson gave you everything he had every time he took the mound.
The strikeout king among all left-handed pitchers.
One of the great talents in baseball, without a doubt, a first ballot Hall of Famer.
But the best lefty of all time is Lefty Grove. We can only wonder how many more games he would have won had he not been shackled to his minor league team.
Lefty Grove won exactly 300 games in his major league career. But what people forget is that Lefty Grove didn't come to the majors till he was 25 years old. He was such a good pitcher for the minor league Baltimore Orioles that Jack Dunn, the owner, refused to sell him until he got the top price.
So by the time Grove hit the A's, he was a fully formed pitcher. I think it could be argued that when Lefty Grove came up as a rookie, he was immediately the best pitcher in the American League.
And he baffled those prodigious hitters in the live ball era of the 1920s and 30s with nothing but heat.
Lefty Grove, through his heyday, was a one-pitch pitcher. He threw that fastball with blinding speed.
He was overpowering. He just threw it so hard, he just almost knocked the bat out of your hand.
They talk about 100 miles an hour. I think he threw 200 miles an hour. Looked like a pea coat up there.
Grove's .680 winning percentage is the highest among 300-game winners, and no one can match his 9 ERA titles.
He was as unbeatable as a pitcher could be. He had 2 years where he was 28-5 and 31-4. A record of 59-9 over 2 years. That seems like a misprint.
And despite his late start in the show, Lefty continued to dominate in his twilight years, turning from speed to guile.
Grove remained a formidable pitcher, even though the fastball was largely gone. And the thing that happened with Lefty Grove is he became a control pitcher.
When you think about it, Grove may not be just the greatest lefty of all time, but the best to ever take the mound.
Lefty Grove was as phenomenal a pitcher as baseball has ever seen. And there are some people who make the case that he was simply the greatest pitcher that ever lived.
Led in strikeouts for 7 years, led in ERA for 9. No one's ever had a record quite like Lefty Grove.
Who could have dreamed that a healthy Lefty Grove, the greatest left-handed starter of all time, wouldn't start a single game in the 1929 World Series? No, Connie Mack took one look at the Cubs' right-handed power, featuring sluggers like Rogers Hornsby, Hack Wilson, Kai Kyler, and Rig Stevenson, and called on the right-handed side armor Howard Emke to pitch the opener. And all this journeyman pitcher did was set a new standard for strikeouts in a fall classic game.
Emke struck out 13 Chicago hitters, a new World Series record.
In the games that followed, Mack continued to start all right-handers, and Grove ended up pitching just 6 1/3 shutout innings in that series, all in relief. Still, the A's won. Mack looked like a genius, and Grove was rested enough to throw an amazing 45 World Series innings over the next 2 years. That's our Prime 9. What's yours?